Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Motivate with Coach Camp. I am your host, Coach Camp, and I'm down here in the very festive, fun, and free studios of SRP with Mr. Derek Michaud. I got news for y'all. 2024 has started out on fire. We have had so much fun around here. We've had some great guests come in. As you guys, if you've been tuning in each week, you know that we had Gary Parrish, we've had the mayor of Walls, and now we are knee deep in our school series, which is all about education. And I wanted a full spectrum whenever we hit on education. And so it's kind of funny because I never really know how these things are going to develop. I don't always set out with like an idea of bullet points. I just kind of let it develop on its own. And we've done that. And so we've had an individual come in, Mr. Miles, come in and talk about how he is going to try to create an entirely new school system that is self-paced, self-driven. I thought that's pretty interesting. Then we had the school, we had three ninth graders. Man, I tell you what, get it from the mouths of babes because they're going to be honest with you. And that was a great one. Well, today's guest is kind of awesome because it does come as a product of the podcast. Whenever you put out a message, and hopefully it's a positive message. I know people don't always do that, but if it's a positive message, sometimes others can really appreciate that because our world needs more of it. And I developed a modest following down in Foley, Alabama, which is it's a coastal town down in the bottom of Alabama. And I've not been there. I've looked it up since then. I've read about it. I've got some stats here we're going to talk about, but it's so crazy because I'm like, wow, there is this group. So I want to put a stamp on it. I want somebody to come in and speak. So I put out a small message. And at that time, I had no idea who would respond. And this lady's mom contacts me and she says, you need to get my daughter on there. A couple reasons. One, she's going to talk a lot. Two, she's all up in some education. And I said, dang, she didn't even know I was doing an educational thing. I love it. So that tells me that God had a purpose and a reason. And now here it is. And so today's guest, I'm going to let her tell all her story. This is going to be a great moment. She is from Foley, Alabama. Her name is Miss Stephanie Cody. She is a teacher down there at the high school. How are you doing, Miss Stephanie?
I am well. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Welcome to the Motivate with Coach Camp podcast. How crazy is that?
Crazy.
I know,
It
I know
really
you're
is.
sitting down there minding your own business, and then it's like, hey, how about coming on a podcast in Hernando, Mississippi?
I love it. I think it's
Yeah,
great. And like you said, I think God has his hand in everything. And so I think this is a divine intervention and an opportunity for me to share some things and for me to have a perspective from my viewpoint on education. But for you to also get to talk about and highlight our wonderful community down here in Foley, Alabama.
absolutely. So let's start with that. So tell me a little bit about where you grew up, family, stuff like that. Just some background.
Awesome. Okay, so I can't profess that I was born and raised in Foley. I was actually born in Selma, Alabama. My family relocated to this area just a few weeks shy of me starting kindergarten. So I am a product of Foley schools. I went to Foley from kindergarten to 12th grade, but I wasn't born here. But obviously, I was raised here. So I have a huge tie to this community. I love this is home for me. I had an incredible upbringing. I was very blessed to be raised in a home with two individuals who very much loved each other, who taught me the importance and gave me a great image of what marriage looks like, and then taught me the importance of having a relationship with Christ, and then also just the very big importance of hard work. Both of my parents were blue collar workers. My dad has passed away. He passed away about 10 years ago. My mom still works for Walmart. So I was raised in a home where I saw the benefit of hard work, but also, you know, the other side of that and just how hard they had to work for us to live the life that we did. I never went without, but I've obviously with having two blue collar workers, there was a lot of living paycheck to paycheck. So I have a huge appreciation for the life that they were able to give me through their hard work. But yeah, I was raised in Foley, went to Foley schools again from kindergarten to 12th grade. It's a great place to live and it's a great place to raise a family. I do tell my girls often, I have two young daughters that are 7 and 12, that they have a very different Foley than I did. When I was growing up here, it was really just, I don't want to say it was, rural, but it kind of was. I mean, yes, we had a few restaurants, and really, if people know about Foley, if they've ever heard of our town, there's only really two big reasons that they used to know about Foley. And that is Lambert's Cafe, which is
I know
this,
about Lambert's throwing the
yeah,
roll. Yeah.
that's right. They're going to
Yeah.
throw the food at you. That's what everybody knows about. They give you really big portions of food and they throw the rolls. And then the Tanger outlets. Most people know about us because we have a huge mall. Now it's a little bit different. We have OWA, which is this amusement park that's been brought in. It's produced by the Porch Creek Indians, and it's great. It's done a huge boost for our economy. And then also we have our events and sports area that has brought in these massive soccer tournaments where we have people from all over the country that come here for soccer tournaments and volleyball and all kinds of really cool stuff. So Foley really has become a well-known area now because of these bigger groups that have brought in these crowds for us.
Funny enough, whenever I mentioned that I had a person coming on from Foley, and I was like, I've never been out there. Everybody I spoke to just about had been down that way. Of course, we go down to Panama City and stuff. So we've been through the
sure.
But for whatever reason, I've not gone through Foley. But so many friends were like, "Oh, Foley's great." And they started telling me stories and stuff. So
yes.
One other quick question though: did you have any brothers or sisters?
I did. I have an older brother. His name is Toby.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're
there. It's a word up, Toby.
Yeah, word up, Toby. Yeah, he was the biggest aggravator growing up. We laugh often because we did not like each other very much growing up, which obviously is the norm.
Age different?
But right, it's about 4 years. He was a senior when I was a freshman in high school, and it was one of those things that he would drive me to school, and as soon as the car was parked, I was out hightailing it in the building. We did not want to be associated with each other. But he is such a great guy, and he lives here now too. He also relocated back to this area. He lived in Auburn, Alabama for a while, and he's one of my very best friends. Like I have a great relationship with my brother, so very thankful for him too.
So growing up in Foley and that, what was some of the influences? What were you thinking about, maybe doing when you were growing up and got into high school, started thinking career path?
So, teaching was never, ever on my radar. I mean, honestly, it's funny. I tell my students this all the time. If you would have told me senior year of high school that I was going to be a teacher, let alone come back and teach at Foley, I probably would have laughed at you. I was the kind of kid, I was pretty outgoing in high school, not the beginning of high school, very shy freshman and sophomore year, but something around junior year, I just kind of came out of my shell and I had a pretty big personality. I was in the marching band until 11th grade, and then I switched from marching band and decided that I wanted to be the mascot. So I was our school's mascot.
That's a big change. Yeah.
Big change, yes. But I loved it, and I was the school mascot my senior year of high school. When it came to who's who, when we had to vote for your senior, I was really vying for class clown. I really wanted that title.
Really? That is so funny.
Right. But I didn't get it. I got most school spirit, which was very much needed as well. I mean, I think that was appropriate, to be honest, but I had a lot of personality. And so when I graduated, I knew that I was going to college. I knew I wanted to go to college and pursue, but I did not really have any idea of what I wanted to pursue. And so I went to Auburn University, War Eagle, huge Auburn fan.
I don't have to guess who you pull for then.
Oh, not at all. Yeah. It runs real deep.
I got you.
But when I went to Auburn and I met with an advisor, and I remember this conversation clear as day. She said, "What is it in your dream world that you would like to do?" And I said, "Well, one of my favorite classes I took in high school was oral communication." And that's not normal. Most kids hate that class because all it is getting up and making speeches in front of other people. And I said, I enjoyed it. I loved talking about things that were important to me or having an opportunity to share what I think or what I believe in front of a room of people. And so she geared me towards communication as a major. And so that's really how I chose my major. And I did. I graduated from Auburn 4 years later with a degree in communication. She was like, "Okay, so what now?" And I can remember thinking, I don't know. Like, I didn't say that out loud. I didn't want to admit that I really didn't know what I was going to do. And so I just told her, I said, "Well, I'm going to move back to Foley," because I was ready to come home at that point. And I said, "I'm just going to kind of put fillers out there, get my resume out, and kind of see what happens." And so that's what I did.
And so I moved back. You still weren't even thinking maybe be a teacher. You were just
thinking, oh, no, not at all.
Communication, radio, TV,
yes.
something like that.
I didn't specifically go to radio, TV, and film as my degree because I knew I wanted to potentially have other options if I needed them. But when I moved back to Foley, I was actually offered a internship with one of the local radio stations here in Gulf Shores, and it was Sunny 105.7. But it was the true internship. They were only going to offer me $50 a week.
Oh, wow.
To help run the radio station. And I can honestly remember coming home and telling my dad, and he was like, yeah, that's not going to work.
What
He
year
said,
was that?
that this would have been 2007.
Yeah, $50 didn't go very far in 2000.
No. And I had to drive over they had just built the expressway and just to go over the bridge. Now, I don't remember exactly what it was my toll booth over back and forth for the whole week. Right. And so I reached out to a former teacher of mine. Her name's Julie Champion. And I was just told her, I was like, I'm really I feel a little lost. And I think that's probably the closest I've ever come to even, I don't want to say I was depressed, but I was very sad. I don't know what I thought was going to happen, that I was going to graduate and some magical job was going to, poof appear. But it was one of those things that I thought, man, I've gone to school for 4 years and I don't even know what I'm going to do. And now I'm kind of, at a standstill. And so she said, listen, why don't you substitute? She was like, substitutes make really great money. You can make your schedule. So if you continue to put your resume out there and you get job interviews, no big deal. The day you have an interview, just don't take a sub job that day. And then you can go on your interview. And I was like, oh, that's a really great idea. And so that's what I did. And I would say within 2 weeks of being a substitute teacher, I knew that this is what I wanted to do.
Started to work and you were like, this is clicking.
This is it. Yeah. I want to work with the youth, especially. And then, so again, this is kind of where my ADD comes in.
Yeah.
It brought back some memories that I had when I was early into my senior year of high school. I was involved with a program called Young Life. I don't know if you've ever heard of Young Life. So it's a Christian-based organization. It's non-denominational. So we had a very active Young Life group when I was coming through high school. And what I loved about it is that it is community-based. So it is literally just kids from Gulf Shores and Foley that would come together from all different denominations and churches once a week. And you play games, it's all about community building, and it just gives you connections with other people who follow the faith. Doesn't matter, Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, that doesn't matter. We're just here because we all love Jesus and we have this huge community that we're building. And through this, I started thinking, I think I want to go into youth ministry. And so I reached out to my pastor at the time, my youth pastor, and I expressed this desire. And the response I got back was basically that he could see me in ministry, but that he would advise me to maybe find a husband that was also in ministry and we do it together. That basically doing it solo was not ideal for a woman to do. So again, to each its own. That really kind of turned me off a little bit. And so that's when I went back to, okay, well, maybe that's not what I meant to do. Well, getting back in the classroom, I realized this is I definitely want to work with the youth. And obviously it's in a completely different capacity, but there's a lot of times where my faith is so important to me in what I do every single day in this classroom. So, that just kind of
a minute too, because you've built so much of the story. So often it is amazing. I'll have like some cliff notes in here and I'm not scripted so much. I have a conversation, but in the end, sometimes you just let a person kind of explore that conversation piece and thought and kind of build the story. All of a sudden you look down, you're like, wow, they've covered a lot of this stuff. And now I can go back and you gave me a whole lot. You gave me a whole lot.
Well, good. Good. I can do this.
I want to back up just a little bit, going down the road of whenever you were in high school and you weren't so sure about things. Did you have a favorite subject? So I want to hit on that real quick.
Oh, for sure. It was oral communication. I did love oral communication, but as far as like core subjects, I was an avid reader. I love to read even now. Nothing academic. And as soon as a teacher told me I had to read something, I immediately lost interest. But that was just the kind of student I was too. And that's another thing I tell my kids. Like, I wasn't this star student. I should have been, and I could have been, but I was your average kid of just, school was school, and I enjoyed it because I was with my friends and I got to socialize. That was,
Sure.
I definitely got
That's normal.
talks too
That's every
much.
teenager, right? That's all.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. So then look at
Yeah.
it that. So when you were going through high school, there was not necessarily a career path. You didn't have the idea of I'm going to do this when I get out. And you did have some things though that did pop up that play big now for who you are, which is you weren't scared to talk to people. You
Mm-mm.
cannot be a wallflower and want to get in front of a classroom. That's difficult. Not to say people don't do that, but that is a challenge for a
For
lot of
sure.
individuals. In fact,
Yeah.
I've said many times that I know that a lot of ways I'm a unicorn in the sense that you give me a crowd of 10 million people and I feel perfectly fine. It's okay for me to talk in front of folks. I don't get nervous. And my wife, if you put her in front of 3 people and she has to present something, she got like red blotches and stuff. And she's like, oh my Lord, I'm so nervous. I'm like, it's 3 people. What are they going to do? They're going to eat you?
Right.
But I know it's an odd trait that certain people have. And when you have that, it's really good when you can go into something that you can impact other people's lives. Another thing you said that I thought was interesting was that you touched on the fact that you enjoyed the captive audience. I got to be quite honest with you. I do enjoy a captive audience as well. So teaching was something that I didn't know I was going to like as either. I don't know if I may have mentioned this to you. So
You did. Yes.
yeah, yeah, I teach it at college, and whenever the idea came to me to become an instructor, I was like, so many teachers would have voted me to be most likely to be homeless. Definitely not somebody teaching or instructing the future. And I'm like, wow, this is a little off kilter being a firefighter paramedic. Now I'm going to teach, but it was a natural fit. And again, oral communication on my side, it was a natural. I took it in college. I think I wrote every speech in 10 minutes before class and got an A on everything. It's
Right.
just easy to talk, right? Give me some notes and then just get out of the way for a second.
Yeah.
So I say all that because I want to build this point in. So you come through that, you go into college, you do pursue something that you were a natural at, I feel like.
Yes.
And it was easy to learn. So if it's something that you're interested in, you don't have to work as hard to grasp it. That's a fact in most things in life.
Agreed.
You come out of that and you're a little lost. And that, my friend, I think more than anything, actually tells why it's so important that you are where you are now is because you can understand that and see those things. When a student gets to the end of their days in high school and they're even thinking about college, it can be so overwhelming, so daunting to think about, I have to grow up now. What am I going to do? Your story blends past that. You actually finished college
It still felt the
and
same
was
way.
feeling lost. I think that's so important, though, for students to understand. You don't have to have life figured out. It is
No.
that you continue to try stuff, explore areas that you think you have an interest in. And then guess what? If it's not something that is for you, call an audible. You did that. You went into the idea of ministry and it was something that was personal to you and passionate because you believe that, and I believe this, your faith is something that drives an individual's thought process, your day-to-day activity, your attitude. It is who you are. And so to be able to express yourself properly, you needed to have that as a part of the element. Your ingredients is one of the things I like to talk about. People have ingredients that make them tick. So here you are, you have all these things that you know are true to you, but you didn't know how to express that. And so when you hit the reverse button for a second and then looked at teaching and you tried that, it was a natural click. And then you realize not only am I able to speak in front of people that I feel comfortable doing, educate individuals, but then I can impress upon them the importance of faith and having a strong mindset to be able to face all the difficulties that we face in this world. So when that moment happened, was it like an aha moment? You come home, you're like, Mom, Dad, I got
Yes.
this thing.
And
I know
then,
what I'm doing.
yeah. And it was so insane, honestly, looking back, how everything just fell into place. I mean, it was like once I knew that that's what I wanted to do, I remember I was driving home one afternoon from substituting and I was listening to the radio and they had an advertisement and it said, "Do you have a bachelor's degree and do you have a desire to teach?" And I was like, what is, and they start talking about this program. We had, it's called Pensacola Junior College. I think it's just Pensacola College now. It's based out of Pensacola, Florida, which is about 45 minutes from where I lived.
Okay.
And they advertised this program that they had where it was an educator prep program. And it was a 3-day a week, a commitment. We had to go Wednesdays and I think it was actually like Tuesdays and Thursdays. I can't really remember. And then all day Saturday. So I was there from Tuesdays from 4 until 8. I was allowed to be a little late because they knew I was coming from Foley. And then on Saturdays, we were there from like 9 until 3. But it was a full year program where we basically took all the education courses that we did not have to get our bachelor's degree. And then at the end, you took the state required test to become a certified teacher for the state of Florida. Now, when I went to the information meeting about this, the first thing I said was, hey, I do not want to teach in Florida. Like, I want to teach at my base school in Foley, Alabama. And they were said, oh, yeah, it's totally fine. Like, we have reciprocity. You're good. So I went through the whole year program, did all the things. And then I found out at the end of the year that there was not reciprocity
Oh my
between
goodness.
Florida and Alabama. But again, I think that's a part of it. I learned a lot through this program. I don't regret one thing about it. Yes, it took up my time, but at the time my husband was still in school at Auburn. And so we weren't able to see each other a lot anyways. I was living at home with my parents, so it kind of gave me that space from them a little bit too, because God, I love them so much. But when you go from having complete freedom from your family to back in the house again, that was a weird dynamic
Sure.
again. And so it did feel like kind of a stopper. Like I thought, okay, now God, this is what I want to do, and now look at this big hiccup that I have. But I'm really big on those things don't happen on accident. And so, yes, it's really stunk when I found that out. But as the person who gave me that information I had to interview for Baldwin County before I could interview with the schools. And Dr. Sisk at the time was working for Human Resources, and he interviewed me. Well, he worked for Human Resources at that time, but before that was my assistant principal at Foley. So he knew me. And so he knew how upset I was when he had said, hey, I hate to tell you this, but all this work you've done, none of it really counts for us. And so I guess he could see it on my face, just the pure disappointment. I was really proud of myself for not crying, because I think that that's really what I wanted to do. I thought, man, all the hours and all the money.
Yeah.
But he said, but we do have something called the ABC, which is an alternative bachelor's certificate. And he said, basically what will happen is if the principal agrees to hire you, you will start taking the courses that you need, the education courses that you did not take to get your bachelor's, while you're teaching. So you can actually start teaching, but you have 3 years, essentially, really 2 to take all the education courses that you have to take. But as long as you stay hired for 3 years, at the end of that 3rd year, you are now a certified teacher. And so that's what
It's
I did.
almost like OJT. You're just on the job training right there.
There you go. And
Yeah.
really, to be honest with you, there's a lot of people who go that route. There's a ton of people in the education system who are not original bachelor's certificate teachers. They were outside working somewhere in the community and decided to come into this fold, and they did it through the ABC. But I think there's a lot to say about that, because you have a different perception, or perspective of the field. So I think there's a lot of power in the ABC.
Yeah, absolutely.
Option.
Whenever I went through to get my bachelor's degree, I was very fortunate in the fact that, so I had been in the military. I had 3 associate's degrees. It's a long story on that. I just get into a rut and you just kept hitting reset. I don't know what was going on, and just couldn't make that next step. And when I finally decided, all right, I'm gonna go get my bachelor's, they actually had experiential learning credits, and so things that you had done in your life could count as hours. And I'm sure that that's probably pretty standard nowadays. And it counted as like, so like my military experience, a lot of the classes I'd had in the military, that counted for college credits, and I think I ended up get like 30 hours credited to me toward my bachelor's. So that expedited that part. And so I get through that and I'm like, might as well get my master's now, because that actually was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Right.
And so those things I think have started to kind of expand. And we're going to talk about some of that, because I know that you and I had the pre-conversation and we were talking a little bit about how education is evolving. And I think that it's not really a guess. It's pretty obvious that a lot of things had to change on a dime when COVID hit. And that affected the entire world. So that wasn't like that was just isolated to a few cities. That was the entire world, obviously. And so I think that's going to help our students moving down the road in the future. I really wanted to get a good background on you before we took our first break, and kind of build the understanding of who Miss Stephanie Cody was and what brought her into this thing. And what do you teach, by the way, before we move down?
I teach now. I have one section of English 11, but I am kind of taking a segue out of English. By next year, I will not have any English courses. I will be full-time career tech education, and I teach a course called Education and Training, and it's actually a 4-year level course. These kids can take the class from freshman year, and it builds every year until their senior year, but it gives students an opportunity to see if teaching is a career that they may want to pursue in the future.
Full disclosure, y'all, I had no idea that's what she taught. I mean, we had discussed lightly, but I didn't understand what that was. And now that was a perfect segue to our first break. And then we're going to come back and I want to dive into what it's like teaching, not just in Foley, but in the system that we have today, because it's very different from what you and I grew up.
Yeah.
What year did you start teaching?
2008. So even for
2000.
my first year teaching, it's very different.
It's
But the kids aren't.
drastically.
I tell people all the time, the kids are not different. People think that
Yeah,
they are, but they're really not.
they're
So we
not different. Exposures are different,
true.
right? So, but in the end, a child is a child.
That's right.
And your influence can always be impactful no matter what generation you fall into. So we're
Correct.
going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. I am going to give you just a little bit of the tidbits of what Foley is made up of population wise and stuff. And then we're going to dive into what Miss Cody does over there at the Foley High School. So y'all come right back.
A great opportunity awaits. The Motivate with Coach Camp podcast is now in its second season, and we are excited to say that we have listeners all over the United States and in 19 countries. If you have a company and you're interested in some very affordable advertising, while at the same time supporting a great cause, please go to motivatewithcoachcamp.com and fill out that sponsorship page, and we'll get right back to you. You can support the podcast through donations on Venmo at Motivate with Coach Camp. Thank you to all the listeners and guests who have blessed this podcast with their engagement and involvement.
And welcome back. Before we took the break here, I was talking to Miss Cody, and we were kind of discussing what it is she does down there at Foley High School. Just to give you guys a little bit of background on Foley itself. Now, correct me if you know different numbers. I do some research now, definitely unlike the Chris Camp that was back in high school. I do some homework before I have my guest on. So Foley, Alabama is roughly around 22,000 to 23,000 in population. In comparison to that, for Hernando, where we are, it's roughly around 18,000. The high school consensus of 9th through 12th grade, which is exactly the same here in Hernando, is roughly around 1,700 students, and we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,400 here in Hernando. And if I'm not mistaken, and you said that you were the mascot, and y'all are the Lions. Is that correct?
We are the Lions. That is correct.
Yeah, I did some homework on this.
Look
stuff,
at
right?
you.
And so that said, it's very similar in nature. The size difference is not too drastic. So it's not like I'm talking to, a teacher in Chicago as an example. So it's
Right.
a hometown feel, right?
For sure. 100%.
So when you go into school, at that point in time, you've been teaching English. Did you say, I want to teach English, or was that something that just happened because that's where they had a need for?
I think I knew that that's where I wanted to be. I knew it wasn't going to be math. I will tell you
I can
straight
feel
up,
you
that
there,
was not going to be it. If kids would leave more
feel you.
confused than when they came in. I really didn't have a huge interest in science. History was on the table, but I knew in my mind that if I was going to teach history, I was going to have to coach some kind of sport. And I am not athletic. So that was, and I'm really, it's kind of a joke. You don't have to coach a sport to teach history, but I knew that the likelihood of getting hired would be higher if I could say, hey, I also, teach volleyball.
Yeah,
coach
exactly.
Volleyball. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, and again, like I said, I love to read and I didn't know this at the time, but man, one of my favorite things is teaching books to kids that when you start that they are just like, oh, this is going to be awful. Like, I do not want to do this. And then to get halfway through and see them like really buy into it and get excited about it. That is the coolest feeling. So, English was just really a natural fit for me.
Yeah, my daughter, she struggles in the English and excels in the math. And I'm like, girl, I'm so glad. Because,
Yes.
I think really the mindset, I think a brain does work very similar because public speaker, I'm really good at history, geography, things like that. You put letters with numbers and
Why?
I don't
Why
know
are we
what's
doing
going on.
that?
I don't know why we're doing that. And I don't know how to punctuate that.
Stop it.
Is it a
Right.
semicolon? What are we doing? I don't even know how to work on that. So yeah, I'm with you on that. In
My
fact,
oldest daughter is
being a
like that
paramedic,
too.
that's important too. You got to know some math. And I'm like,
Mhm.
we got apps. We got apps on the phone. So, but you're
Well,
going to say something about your daughter?
I'm sorry. Yeah. My oldest also is not, she's a math person for sure. And so of course, when I first started realizing like, she doesn't love to read like I did, because by fourth grade, I mean, it was not unheard of to find me in my room, like just reading a book. Like that was it for me. And, so it kind of broke my English teacher heart that my kid didn't love to read. But man, honestly, I'm so thankful that she loves numbers, because I know that as far as like securing her future, like it's great that she really likes numbers, because man, math can really carry you far, just like English can too, obviously. But I don't know. It's, it's funny. I just remember how much I worried about that when she was little, and now how much I appreciate how well she does. And she does do well across all her subjects, but she has to work harder, I feel
Sure.
like, for reading than she does for math. Math just kind of comes natural for her.
Yeah, that's my daughter's in ninth grade and she's 14. And man, I'd say by sixth grade, she had left the area that I could help her in math. But thank God
Right.
my wife's good at that stuff. So I'm like, y'all got
Same.
good mother
My,
daughter time. Y'all do
yep.
that. So,
My husband's an engineer. So anytime
oh,
numbers come up, I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna let you go see your dad.
beautiful.
Your
It's a
dad take
great
care of you.
blend. You need to have that blend.
Correct.
All right, so let's talk about this real quick. So I know personally, like I just had three ninth graders on my show. Ironically, my daughter wasn't one of them. She's all out on that. And so when she sees or hears anything, and it's like, you're talking about me again, weren't you, Dad? I'm like, no, yes,
Yes.
I was.
Yeah.
So these three guys, they really had two girls and a guy on there, and their perspective was perfect. They had some great answers. One of the things that I found intriguing was they talked about how it is tougher in today's world with the social media, the in the sense of there's this constant distraction, Snapchat being one of them. I'm not a snapper, but apparently there's even snap scores you got to keep up with. I don't know about these scores. And they're constantly feeling like this need to check their phone. And they were very open and honest with stuff. But the benefit to it too was the fact that they could help each other. So like if there was a problem or something, like somebody needed a ride after school, it was not a difficult thing. Back in my day, man, you had to hope you came across your friend saying,
You
"Hey,
better
look, I
run
gotta
to the
get a ride."
parking lot.
I know, right? Because you would just miss a ride. That was a great example. And so
Yeah.
that said, I would imagine being a high school teacher. So I'm a college teacher, and I have to constantly get on to young adults. I'm like, hey, look, y'all see me talking and showing you something. And in 5 minutes, you're going to ask me, how was it you're supposed to do this? I'm not telling you again. The problem is I have to tell them again because it could kill somebody if I didn't. But you know, the false threat. So that said, in high school, is it a challenge at times, or how do you keep them on task where they're not being distracted from their phones?
Absolutely. I mean, if anyone tells you it's not, I mean, I don't want to say that they're lying, but for sure. But here's the reality of it. Even as adults, we have now developed this, and addiction is such a strong word, but there is something that happens to your brain, when you get a notification, when someone likes your post. Even my mom, who is older, I mean, she's on Facebook and she'll show me things, or like, look at this person I went to high school, we have all kind of developed this need almost that can come.
It is a
Yes,
type of
dependence.
dependency.
Perfect. So I think the thing is, we did a zero cell phone policy, zero tolerance policy here this year. We tried something new, and it is very much like there's a protocol for it all. I run things slightly different. I have two charging stations in my classroom, and they're fast charge. So we're only in class for 45 minutes. So the kids know, like, if they put their phone on charge, it will be fully charged before they leave. And now that's another thing that's kind of crazy to me, because I put my phone on charge before I go to bed at night. These kids do not, just so you know. Like, I can't tell you, it'll be first period, and they're like, Miss Cody, my phone's almost dead. I'm gonna go put it on charge. I'm like, why? It's 7:50. Like,
Wow.
So I do that to kind of help motivate them to get the phones away from them. And I'm really big on, if you guys will give me your undivided attention for this part of the lesson, we should wrap up with 5 minutes at the end of the period. And if you will give me all of your time right now, then I will give you that space at that 5 minute period at the end for you to kind of breathe and do what you need to do to get caught up on what you missed for the 40 minutes that I had your undivided attention. And honestly, I've done that for the last few years, and it's not always 5 minutes, because sometimes it's bell to bell, and that happens too. But they know that if they respect my time, that I'm going to respect theirs. And that's a big part of it. It's just treating these young adults like young adults. And it doesn't always work. There's obviously times that
There's going to be a couple in the class that's going to abuse the situation or whatever.
Yes.
Absolutely. I get that.
But once you can get the majority of your students to buy into what you're doing, they'll take care of it for you. There's been times that I've had kids be like, dude, she's going to let you have the last few minutes. Like, just put it up and let's get this done. And I'm really big on doing teamwork type of activities. I hate calling it group work, because the way I do group assignments is not the traditional, like where one kid does all the work and everybody gets the same grade.
Mhm.
Everybody has a job that they have to do to contribute to that assignment. And so we do a good bit of that too, so that everybody has to pull their weight. But it also makes the community in the room really strong. And that's the thing is my job, I feel like in the first week of school is to build a community within the kids that are in my room so that there's trust, that there's, an ability to work together because that's huge in what we're doing in the classroom. And so they help me with monitoring a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's always great when you can empower the kids to have some ownership. And I think compromise is something that is sometimes frowned upon in certain circles. I don't want to be too general with it, but I get it. When you're in a place where you have to be the leader in authority of something, sometimes there could be this idea that you would lose some version of strength in that situation if you compromised with others. I completely disagree. As not just a teacher, not just as somebody that has been a coach for 20 something years with players of all ages, I have found that when you will take a few of your bigger personalities that are in a
Mhm.
group, you give them some strength. You let them know that, hey, look, I'm looking to you to help with this. I have seen so many times them take some ownership on that. And that makes not just my job easier, but I think it's more impactful to the kids. I say those things because I want to talk about this part here. The guy that we had on, Mr. Michael, the first part of the series, his idea is to build a educational system, which he's only trying this right now in Mississippi. He's trying to get it off the ground. And there's a whole first year thing that he has to go through to be accredited. And the idea is that from K through 12, they get to choose the topics that they are most interested in. Now they'll have their core subjects that they still have to hit for the state requirements. But in the end, it's a self-guided, self-paced, year-round program that they go through. And once they hit certain, I guess, expectations is the best way to put that, then they are promoted up to the next grade, I thought about it. And whenever he told me the first time, I thought that's just crazy. And then I thought about it some more. I said, you know what? Education has changed a lot. And with what we're talking about here, where you have students in your classroom that are going to be distracted and pulled to their technology, why not start using some of that to our advantage? Because I think there's a lot of benefit there. One of the things I did in my classroom was I made videos of all the skills that they have to learn. So being a paramedic instructor, you have to, obviously there's a lot of things from IVs to bandaging, just to use a couple examples. And me showing them once, it'll come over time as they practice, but I was like, why not make videos? So they pull that up on their YouTube or whatever I've made TikToks with it. So there's just been little things I started using, and he has a vision for some of that. So I was just curious, is there anything that you use in the social media realm to help in the teaching aspect of things?
100%. So we're very blessed here. We are a one-to-one campus, meaning that every one of our students has a Google Chromebook.
Okay.
There's the bell.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, when any like projects, lots of times they're using technology and they're using platforms that they will be able to use after they graduate. I'm a huge fan of Canva. I don't know if you have used Canva or any have heard of it.
Look that up. Yeah.
You really need to. It's amazing. It's basically a platform where students can build presentations, they can make flyers, they can make videos, and they use that to really digitize. It's all about digital marketing, really, is what they're doing. And they don't even realize it. They're learning the skill of how to make a social media post that's going to really grab attention. It's
I want to take
not right. But I use that platform, honestly, in all of my classes, English, and even my education and training classes, because yes, Google Slides will make a beautiful presentation, but Canva is going to like really step it up. And so, because they have these computers, they can film themselves. They make their own videos. They have submitted TikToks. Like I'm like, hey guys, now that this is something I did a few years ago, but like after we read The Hunger Games, I'm like, okay, I want you to make a promo video to entice capital people, the rich people from the capital, to come to District 12. And of course, at first they're like, District 12 is nasty. Like why would anybody? And I'm like, that's your job. You got to figure out how to sell it, spin it. Think about the way advertisers get you to do what, and so it really got their brains rolling, and they used all kinds of cool resources to build these phenomenal videos. And so, yeah, I think you have to kind of, take the curriculum that you're given, the content that you have, and then fit it for the audience that you're teaching and making sure that you're giving them skills that they can use later. And I think that's 100% what we're doing with these computers. I don't think it's a negative thing. I think it's a positive, honestly.
It can absolutely be a positive. We talked a little bit about that before we started the conversation, in the fact that, anything can be used in the wrong way for the wrong intents. And then in the long run, it can have detriment, or you can take those things and use it for a positive spin. And for me, podcasting and public speaking, obviously I use a lot of social media because that's how I get the word out.
Right.
And I think it's important that we recognize, there's going to be negativity out there, but in the end, why not be a part of the positivity? Why not be a part of that voice? And part of that sometimes is using that technology that's available to us to help mold the future in the way that they understand it anyways, because that's what they're interested in.
Yes.
And that's part of what Michael's process is to get kids to go down an educational path of things that they're interested in. And you were saying just before the break, see how I blended all the way back to this.
Right. I love it.
You were saying just before the break that you were about to transition out of English. So tell me a little bit about this new program that you're about to head up.
Yes. So it was another one of those things that just kind of happened. We've had the course here on our campus for a while. And I had a friend of mine who was an assistant principal here a few years ago, who now works in our human resources department, reached out and he said, listen, I think you would be, a perfect person for this job. He's like, you love teaching. You own that. Like and I do. I love my job, and not many people get to say that. And so he said, I really think that you could be the person that could help our students maybe find this as a future career. And so I started doing some research, and this course falls under what we call family and consumer science. So I had to go take the praxis for family and consumer science, which, funny enough, is a very broad topic. So yes, education was a big part of it, but then there were questions about cooking temperatures and the types of meats. And I'm like, oh no, so I had to do some real studying before I took the test, but I did pass. And then the very next year, which was just last year, I got my first opportunity to teach the course. And I had 2 sections of education and training, and then 1 section of teaching 1 and 2, which are the next, second, and third levels. But the classes were so small that they had to combine them into 1 class.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I had a total of like 60 students that were in my, what we call a cluster for education and training. This year, I now have 4 sections of education and training and 2 sections of teaching 1. And then I do have a small section of teaching 2, because I just had a few kids that were already a part of the program that have stayed with it for the 3rd section of the course. And so I went from 60 students to now I have 120. And it's looking like next year I should absolutely have close to 150 or 160, whatever that margin would need to be in order to teach it all day long. But again, our career tech department, honestly, just to talk about it briefly, here at Foley High School is the largest in Baldwin County. Baldwin County is currently building something called the Baldwin Prep Academy, but it's basically a career tech academy, but we still have those career tech courses here at our high school. And so students at Foley have so many options, and I'm going to try to name them all, but I just pray I don't miss anything. But we have ag, and ag is not just when I was a student years ago, I thought ag students basically just built benches or like picnic benches and stuff like that. Our ag department is phenomenal. They learn about welding. They learn about mechanics, construction. We have an animal science teacher, so they're getting vet experience as well. We have horticulture, so landscaping, learning all about the plants side of things. We also have real estate, if students are interested in pursuing real estate, which I don't know about you guys, but down here, obviously real estate is huge. We're right here by the beach, so lots of real estate.
Is the fastest growing county in the state of Mississippi. Yes.
Okay. Well, Baldwin County is right there with you.
Yes.
It is insane, the growth that we've had. Like when you said 22,000, because I haven't looked it up, and that actually surprised me because it feels like it is so much more than that here now. But I'm sure that is actually correct. But we are booming right now, and it obviously has slowed down a little bit because of the interest rates and things like that. But real estate is still a hot commodity and something that students can explore. We have digital marketing. We have business. We have Air Force Junior ROTC. So for students who are considering the military side of things, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of it. Oh, we have health sciences. So students actually get to go to the hospital and work with patients at the
Oh, nice.
hospitals. Yes. I mean, so really and truly, there are a plethora of options for them to explore. Family and consumer sciences. So that's hotel management. That is hospitality and tourism, which again, where we live is massive. In fact, OY is going to partner with us soon to where our students are actually going to be the ones that help plan some of their big events that they host. So I'm big on career tech education because I see the importance of giving students an opportunity in high school to explore these different career fields. And I'm very open with my students. Do I want all 120 of my kids to graduate and be like, I'm going to be able to be a teacher? That would be phenomenal. But
Yeah.
the reality is, a lot of times they take that first level course and they realize at the end, I do not want to be a teacher. And that to me is just as important and just as powerful, because I don't want you to go and waste 4 years of, your time in college, because that's the other thing I tell some of our community members when I get the opportunity to talk about the course. A lot of times college students who pursue education are not even in the classroom until their junior year of their college time. And if you get their junior year and you're in the classroom with kids and you think, ooh, I don't know that this is it. You've already burned so much time that more than likely you're just going to stick with it to get the degree and be done.
Right. You're right.
With this course, my students, we are at our local elementary school twice a week. They are paired with an elementary school teacher and they work with a class of students twice a week for the whole school year. So they get that hands-on experience. And our elementary schools here are K to 6. So when they come into my course, when we get ready to start going over to the elementary school, I ask them, I'm like, do you want to work with younger students or older students? So they kind of pick a window of K to 2nd grade or 3rd to 6th grade. And by Christmas time, I'll typically have 1 or 2 that come to me and say, hey, I asked for 6th grade, but this is not it. Can I please go to kindergarten? Or the opposite. So it also gives them an opportunity to kind of figure out kind of an age group. And I tell them too, I actually did sub at the elementary school a couple of times and then quickly realized they're sweet, but that's not my age group. I would much rather work with older students. And so they kind of get to explore that option as well.
Yeah, it's so important to be able to taste test, is the way I kind of tell it to my students at times. It's not for everybody, and sometimes you think it is for you, whatever that topic is. And if you don't go out and give it a shot, an honest shot, then you're not going to know. And it's tough whenever you have invested so much time, so much money. You're the exception, by the way, Miss Stephanie. To have a great attitude, I think it does go back to your faith. I'm just being honest with you. Whenever you went down the road of going over to Florida to get the teaching degree and it didn't work out, there's so many individuals I know personally that would have been like the nail in the coffin of, well, this just ain't meant to be. I need to do something different. And they would have just thrown the towel in. And so often I have made mention to this, not just on this show, but just in general and speaking. And then of course in class, is that so many times in my personal life as well, that I've went down a road that I felt like I should have been traveling and things didn't work out the way I had envisioned them to. But as I got older, and what you said too, it's amazing when you look back and you see how so many things played a role into being where you are today. I think that's true for everybody as they go through life. It's just not everybody's paying attention and they miss these moments. And for me, it was the same thing. Whenever I had these things that I had set out to do and it didn't work the way I had thought they should, I didn't realize how many tools I was getting in that moment of perceived failure. And then that came in big as I went to the next thing in my life. And so for you right now, what you're doing is I can't even put a value on it, because it's so important that kids have an opportunity to see what they are good at and what they have a genuine interest in. I know personally, and I know I'm not unique, it's everybody. There have been many times, especially when I was younger, that I really, really thought I was 100%, this is what I want to do with whatever it is. And I get to that moment and I start, doing whatever that thing is. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a real example. I don't want to be vague. I moved out to the country, Stephanie. I'm from the city. I moved to the country. We got 8 acres. I'm like, I am going to become a farmer. I have got chickens. I've got horse, cows, sheep. I'm like, I'm lining this thing up. I am going to be a legit farmer, dude, as well as a teacher. Holy moly, that was a bad idea. So much work. And there's really not, unless you just love constantly having to make sure an animal's not sick, hurt, fed, watered. If that's not your love, it becomes work.
Yes,
So
I can see that.
Yes. Dwindled. We're down to like a horse, a cow, and a handful of chickens, and a
Right.
couple dogs. And so it's like, but if I would have never done that, I
You
probably
would have always
went to
wondered.
my grave thinking, man, I really wish I would have given that a shot. I think we should have done that. So I
Right.
regret doing it. And I
Right.
learned
And
a lot.
well,
But
and I
I'm
was gonna say,
glad that we're not down that road now.
well, and I tell people often too, I don't regret that I have a bachelor's degree in communication because that has completely
Absolutely.
served me. I mean, there have been so many times that I've been given the opportunity to speak in front of not just big groups, but even small groups of like people who are extremely important. And I felt confident going into those and the conversation I was able to have because of what I was given through my bachelor's degree. I now have a master's degree in secondary English education. So I do feel like I've got all the credentials to be where I am. But I don't regret any part of my path because like you just said, I picked up so many tools for my toolbox on my journey. Did
Yeah.
it seem in that moment
Absolutely.
like a roadblock and maybe God was trying to tell me this is not what you're supposed to do? Absolutely correct. But now looking back, it's just, to me, it's a really beautiful picture of what I've been given and the opportunities that I've had.
I've often wondered how, grandparents could just take things in such stride. And when it felt like the world was collapsing, the grandparents were just kind of like, chill about it. And then as I've gotten older, now I have two grandkids, I'm like, now I get it. It's because you realize the moment does suck. Whatever that moment is that you're dealing with, it does, but it's going to pass.
It will.
And you're doing some things right now that you're going to need for later, and you just have to embrace that. And so actually I gave a speech on embracing your failures, and the whole time I'm talking, I'm like tapping myself proverbially on the back like, hey dude, you should be listening to what you're saying.
Right.
That's true. You're speaking
Yes.
to yourself, right? So I think that's great. So then you are definitely a change agent. And I think in schools, that is something that I hope is starting to spread nationwide. There's no way for me to know that, but this is a big part of why I wanted you to come on, because you're actively engaged in a school system, which is maybe 7 hours down the road from where we are. But, as we are all the same, but there are things that are done different. And so I don't know how many things in the Hernando school system is like this, but I know that they are starting to gear more towards trade jobs. That is
Yes.
a more of a topic than it ever has been. When I was in high school, we had shop, and
Right. That's yes.
yeah,
Same. That
there's
was like
about-
really
there
it. Yeah.
wasn't much going on. In fact, I'll say this. I've said this many times. I was supposed to play for the New York Yankees. It turns out I was supposed to be a baseball player for the Yankees,
Wow.
but just because I really wanted to, they don't really hire you because of that. You actually got to be really, really good, like the best in the world. And
Gotcha.
so when I didn't measure up to being able to be a professional baseball player, no one told me, you love baseball. I mean, I knew baseball inside and out. I knew stats. I could tell you everything. Why don't you be an analyst? Why don't you be a commentator? You like to talk, be a top. I could be on TV. I could just talk about baseball. Didn't even think that way. It was
Right.
second baseman or nothing. Man, if I could go back and talk to me, I'm not regretting anything I've done, but I'm like, there are options. And so what you're doing, and you mentioned you would love to see all 120 students take on the world of education, because that is where we need key players in education, medicine, you name it. There are so many important jobs out there that we need to groom our kids to be ready to take on, because the world's always changing and it's not going to be easier. It's always going to be a tough world. We got to be able to put some skills inside of them and confidence inside of them. You said, but what you're doing is what happened to you after college, and that's planting seeds. And that's so important. So planting seeds is not something you always see the benefit from immediately. It takes a while for the tree to grow, and some trees grow slower than others. But what I can tell you is what you're doing is massively, massively important for the future. And I love hearing someone like yourself that I've never known until today really have such a passion for children and their education. Now, leading towards the finish line, I've got to ask this question, because you have your own podcast at the high school. Is this correct?
I do.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
So we have a podcast called Paw Prints, and we have filmed last year. We filmed season 1, and we have filmed episode 2. I sounds totally out of order for season 2, but the episode we were supposed to do for the start of the season, it was like if it could go wrong, if we just could not get it recorded. So it's got me thinking. We have another a new career tech course that we're going to be offering here at our school. I believe not this coming school year, but the next is audio production. In fact, I have to brag on one of our faculty members here. His name is Dr. Michael Roy. He actually worked with our state department to write the curriculum for this course. But the whole purpose of the course is for students to get to experience audio production.
Nice.
So they, in fact, our students are the ones that work sound and equipment and everything for our pep rallies, for our plays, the big theater productions at our school. Our own students are the ones running all the sound and the mics and everything for that. So because I've had so many issues trying to film this first episode, I feel like God is laying on my heart to kind of hand this podcast over to this audio production group and let students run paw prints. I think it's something that I've got to talk about with the audio guys, as far as I do think obviously that an adult needs to be a part of the production, but maybe it could be something that a different faculty member sits in every episode. But really giving our students an opportunity to be the voice behind it. So I haven't even, that is like, that's an announcement I haven't even talked with the guys with.
Breaking. I wish I had some music over
Right.
breaking news right there, baby.
Right. I've enjoyed it. This is second nature for me. I enjoy doing this, but I'm also extremely busy on our campus, and I don't want the potential that this podcast has. I do not want it dependent on me. And that is part of the reason that I want to share it with this audio production group and see about it being something more than what we've got initially going. But we already have a great following just for that first season. I think, it has the potential to do good. And that's again, even with our social media, we want our community to see all the amazing things that are happening on our campus every day.
Yeah, Stephanie, I'll tell you this. I think I've said this often. I think that it is a strength to know your weakness. And my weakness is exactly what you're saying as well. So maybe we're brother and sister in another.
Right.
I don't know what's going on, but it's like, I'm really good at being in front of a mic, being in front of people talking. And that's why I have Derek Michaud. Because he's the producer of all of this. He does all these things. And so without him, I mean, I wouldn't be able to do this. I just have my phone, I guess, talking into my phone or something. But
right.
Absolutely, you're right. When it comes to putting on something that is going to be meaningful for the right reasons, you want to have the right people. Derek was the guy for me. I love the fact, though, that you've stepped into that direction. So you've kind of brought that to light. And I think that podcasting and just communicating a message in general is needed. And when you're at a high school, man, if we'd have had something cool like that, we had like that early morning news thing. We had the TV up in the classroom.
We have that too. Yes.
We would do some of that. They had some of those things going, which I wasn't even interested in that stuff at that time, but, that's crazy. I should have been, I guess. I don't know. But, I think the podcasting is something that's going to be around for a very long time. That's why Derek was like, hey, look, we got to get you a show. So come on. And we've been doing this. We're in our second season currently. And, I think that's great. I think that's awesome to let the kids take some front roles on those things and be able to learn at this age right now. By the time they're my age, they'll be pros.
They'll have it down.
Geez. Yeah.
For sure.
For sure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, I have absolutely enjoyed our conversation. Is there anything you would like to leave my listeners with? Any kind of final thoughts?
I think the biggest thing is to just to trust the education system. I know that's not always easy to do. And I know a lot of times disappointing things do come out, and that's the thing, is people are going to disappoint you. We're sinful by nature. And unfortunately, people are going to let you down. But please know that in this building, you have people who are in this field because they have a passion for young people, and they want to make a difference in the lives of the students that you're sending to that building every day. And I have to do that too. I have to trust that when I send my children to the elementary school, I pray over them, and I just pray that the right people are in their life. And, I just put a lot of trust in the people that are running those classrooms. And because I promise you, the vast majority of us are there with the purpose of wanting to make a difference in the lives of the youth.
Absolutely. You can't judge the whole by a few. And
That's
it doesn't matter
exactly
what
right.
it is. You're going to have a few in every group that's going to be the ones that are hard-headed and cause
For
problems.
sure.
But you know what? That's not the majority. I believe most people have good in their heart and they want to do good. So I'm
Agreed.
on that. Well, thank you so much, Miss Stephanie, for coming on all the way down in Foley.
Thank you for having me. I
Man,
appreciate
it's been
it.
fun. Yeah. And look, so open invitation. It's out there. So the whole world is going to hear this. If you want me and Derek ever to come down and talk on the podcast, speak to the kids, we do a lot of that. We do a lot of mentorship here in Memphis. We have the Hope Center, and we would be honored if you guys ever have a open, come on down and talk to the people thing. We would love to come down and do that at Foley, Alabama.
That would be awesome. We'll definitely take you up on that.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Hey, look, listeners, thank you guys. Look, this doesn't even matter. If I'm like, my wife would disagree. She would say he would talk in a closet anyways by himself. But you guys tuning in, being so supportive, that's what makes all this so much fun. And in the end, I know that we're making a difference out there together, because it's not about me. It's about us. It's always about us. Motivate with Coach Camp, and that's what it's all about. Thank you again, Miss Stephanie. And to my listeners, continue to tune in. Go to my social media, motivatewithcoachcamp.com. You can click on everything. If you want to be a sponsor, hey, consider doing that, because I need you on my team as well. And until next time, Coach Camp out.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want, and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up.